See that derailed train? Well, this was in East Palestine, and it was a Norfolk Southern train that derailed. And now we're hearing that the CEO of Norfolk Southern, the same company whose train derailed and caused an environmental disaster in Ohio, was rewarded for that good work with a massive pay raise. I'm not kidding. So news broke that Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw received a 37% increase in compensation last year, even after the company's railroad was involved in a financially and ecologically disastrous derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. That local community has continued suffering as a result of that train derailment. Shaw received $13.4 million in total compensation in 2023, up from $9.8 million in 2022. His base salary rose $200,000 to $1.1 million, and his stock and option awards rose $2.2 million to $10 million. Now, last year was Shaw's first full year as the CEO after starting on May 1st of 2022. So part of that increase in compensation can be attributed to having worked more months on the job last year than the year earlier. But he was president of the company in the first 4 months of 2022, and his promotion to that role in late 2021 had already resulted in his compensation more than doubling in 2022 compared to 2021. Apparently, all higher ups at the company are in favor of this massive pay increase. A proxy filing from Norfolk Southern said its board has unanimous support for the company's strategy that balances, get a load of this, safe and reliable service. Is it? Continuous productivity improvement and smart growth under the leadership of CEO Alan Shaw. By the way, Norfolk Southern had been basically cutting back on certain safety protocols, which has led to an increase in the train derailments that the country has been experiencing over the last several years. So great work.
We might have millions of people watching this show, but you can be the difference maker, because we just need 1% of our audience to be paid members, and then this show can be around forever. So you can make that difference. Click join now. To the board, that probably is great work, because remember, they don't care about like, oh, the community of East Palestine. That's not what they're basing bonuses or pay increases on. They're doing it about the bottom line. So what the CEO did was he cut costs a lot, which helped their profits. And then when it blew up on him, in this case, literally, they think he did a pretty good job of getting people distracted. And I don't know how much they paid off the politicians, but they basically got the Biden administration to cover for them. And then the Biden administration got blamed, but Norfolk Southern didn't. And then the Republicans helped in that process by blaming Biden. And Biden never did barely anything about East Palestine, so it seemed like, oh, I guess it's Biden's fault. But in the meanwhile, both the Republicans and the Democrats covered for the company.
That's right.
Nobody did anything about the actual company that blew up the train in the first place, because they wanted to cut costs. And by the way, the accident happened. The company later purposely, literally blew up their own train, sending dangerous chemicals into the community.
Yeah.
And were they held accountable by Democrats or Republicans? Nope, because both the Democrats and the Republicans are owned by companies like this.
So let me
So when you look at his performance, I'm sure the board looked at it and thought, you cut costs, we had a huge disaster, but you did a great job of blaming others for it, so we got away totally scot clean. I mean, this guy did a great job, a 37% pay raise. Next year, cut even more. And who cares if there's more accidents? It turns out we can just buy the politicians and have no consequences for the disasters we cause. And if you look at it from that perspective, you begin to understand why they paid him more.
Initially, the derailment was financially disastrous for Norfolk Southern, though. We'll get to that in a moment. But I just want to remind everyone of what that derailment did to that local community, because it's important to remember how disastrous it was for that local community. On February 3rd of 2023, 38 train cars derailed in East Palestine. 20 of the cars contained hazardous chemicals like vinyl chloride, ethyl hexyl ecrylate, and butyl ecrylate. So a bunch of chemicals that are harmful to the environment and the local community if they're spilled through a derailment. Vinyl chloride is a known human carcinogen, and exposure can also cause fatigue and dizziness, as well as irritation to the eyes, mucous membranes, and the respiratory tract. People had to evacuate the area, leave their homes, and their property values sunk as a result of that derailment and the environmental disaster that happened as a result of that derailment. And the accident didn't result in any fatalities, luckily, but did cause a massive fire fueled by toxic chemicals and, again, the evacuation of the town. And residents of East Palestine are still reporting negative health impacts from that crash, including hair loss, tremors, and migraines. But now let's take a look at what happened in Norfolk Southern initially, and how this could potentially, possibly justify the kind of pay raise the CEO got. The company's overall net income fell 44% last year to $1.8 billion. Shares of Norfolk Southern fell 22% in the 2 months following the accident, but the stock has since recovered most of its value, and its current share price is slightly above its pre-derailment level. So to your point, Cenk, sure, they took a massive hit in the beginning, but they've recovered since then. And when you take a look at how much money they saved from not updating their braking system or doing the necessary checks to ensure that everything is in place and it would prevent the derailments from happening, well, looks like the cost savings by cutting certain things outweigh the potential financial costs that come from the derailment initially.
Yeah, so the reason the company's price goes down in the beginning is because people mistakenly think that there's going to be accountability. So people panic and the price goes down, makes sense. And then they find out later, oh, never mind, we live under 100% corporate rule. Both parties are the servants of corporations. There was no accountability, none. So the stock price goes back up. Oh, fantastic. You cut costs and turns out you could endanger whole towns at a time. You could blow up your trains in the towns and there's not gonna be any downside for the company financially. So congratulations. The most important part is, and again, if you're on the board and this guy's job, his only job is to increase your profits and you don't care about anything else, including morality or fellow citizens, and then he brings you a stock price that's higher than before the derailment, you're gonna get a 37% raise.
And here we are. Now, I do want to give some credit to some of the shareholders who were not in agreement in regard to this pay raise. So they condemned the raise, saying in a statement, it's alarming that the board rewarded Mr. Shah with a massive raise in total compensation of $13.4 million during the same year he presided over industry worst operating results, sustained underperformance, and a tone-deaf response to the derailment in East Palestine. This failure of corporate governance reinforces the need for sweeping changes to Norfolk Southern's well-paid board.
Now that leads to another problem. So it's not just that, hey, he was so callous, but the bribes that companies do overall, and they're legalized bribes, to these scumbag politicians on both sides worked. It's also that the boards are often very incestuous. So the executives appoint the board then says the executives should get gazillions of dollars, and round they go. One of the hilarious examples of that was a long time ago when under a different administration of Disney, the CEO put his dentist on the board of a giant company like Disney, okay? And then you'll be shocked to find out that the dentist agreed he should get a massive pay increase. Okay, so these are some of the boards at these esteemed companies.